Why is it so difficult to move money across borders? Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to Plain English, the best podcast for learning English. I'm Jeff. JR is the producer, and this is episode 186. You can find a full transcript of the program, translations into 7 languages, a video lesson, flashcards, and a fast version of the program, all on the episode website, plainenglish.com/186. If you travel abroad, do business overseas, or support a family member in another country, you've probably encountered a frustrating problem. It's slow and expensive to send money across international borders. In today's episode, we'll explore why that is, and we'll see whether there's any hope for a better answer in the future. Have you had a chance to check out our new membership program, Plain English Plus? It's a great way to get even more value out of the program you already know and love. To learn more, just visit plainenglish.com/plus. In any major city in the United States, if you go to the right place, you'll see an array of shops all offering money transfer services to other countries. A lot of these shops are specific to destination countries. Just here in my neighborhood, you can find money transfer shops specializing in payments to Mexico, Ecuador, Colombia, El Salvador, and Guatemala. That's in addition to the branches of bigger money transfer agents like Western Union and MoneyGram. Every day, people line up inside these shops to send money back home to support relatives. The word in English is remittances. When workers go to another country to work for higher wages, the money they send back home is a remittance. Worldwide, the total amount of remittances per year is about $600 billion, or about the same size as the entire economy of Argentina or Sweden. I can tell you from observing with my own eyes and from people I know that they work extremely hard for the money that they send back home. Unfortunately, though, a large part of what workers send back is lost to fees, sometimes up to 10%. If you can send a message in an instant and for free from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world, why can it still cost 10% and take a week to send $200 across borders? One big reason is that not everyone uses a bank account. If you, the sender, or your recipient doesn't have a bank account, then you rely on networks like Western Union or other small transfer agents, which need to maintain expensive shops. They have to pay rent, they have to pay agents to sit in the shops, and they need to pay for all the security necessary to handle cash. They also need to have enough money on hand in all their destinations in order to serve their customers. Having that money always available is expensive in its own way, too. Western Union is one of the most expensive ways to send money, and they know it. But they also know that they are one of the only choices you have if your recipient needs to pick up money in cash. But let's say both you and your recipient both have bank accounts in your respective countries. You still pay a minimum of 5% even if you work with a big commercial bank. Banks still send money across borders using a system that was established in 1973. It's called SWIFT, which is a bit of a misnomer. SWIFT is a messaging system in which banks send instructions to one another. There are 10,000 financial institutions that are part of SWIFT. They can't all have individual relationships with one another, so they send the instructions through the SWIFT system. And to make things more complicated still, your instructions might have to go through several mini networks within SWIFT in order to get to your recipient's bank. And everyone involved in the SWIFT process, the sending bank, the receiving bank, and any banks in between that need to act as brokers, they all charge a little bit of a fee. Now, banks and transfer agents will tell you how much they're charging for the service, but they won't tell you another way they charge you, the exchange rate markup. And this sounds complicated, but it's fairly simple. There is no official or legal exchange rate between two currencies in most cases. The exchange rate is simply the amount buyers and sellers of a currency are willing to pay one another. Practically speaking, if you look up the exchange rate online, what you see is the best rate that the biggest financial institutions give each other. Now, you and I, as consumers, we don't get the very best rate, but if we try hard enough, we should get pretty close. Unfortunately, when it comes to sending money abroad, money transfer agents and sometimes big banks give you a bad exchange rate and they pocket the difference. Now, we haven't even begun to talk about the time it takes to do all this. One of the big delays in sending money has to do with anti-money laundering regulations. Most governments have Know Your Customer regulations, often abbreviated KYC. Banks are required to take measures to protect against money laundering and other illegal activities. This slows down your transfer all along the SWIFT network. Depending on the number of stops along the network, your money could take up to a week to arrive. Is there any hope that this can get better? Slowly but surely, new financial technology companies are starting to disrupt the dinosaurs of money transfer. One new firm called Remitly, based in the United States, is taking an innovative approach. It gives customers the chance to choose whether they want the lowest fees or the fastest delivery times. They can also deliver the cash to your recipient's address via a network of destination country partners. Another relatively new firm, TransferWise, has already captured 15% of all outbound money transfers from the UK. They are the one that I personally use, and they tend to have the lowest fees and the best exchange rate, at least to the countries I've had to send money to. some of the new money transfer agents are getting faster too. The old way of sending money was to, send the money. Take it from your account and give it to the recipient's account. But there is another way to do it. Let's say you're working with a transfer agent that has money in both locations. Let's pick the US and Mexico since that's a very popular corridor for remittances. A company like TransferWise will have bank accounts in both places with a lot of money in both accounts. If I want to send money to someone in Mexico, I can give TransferWise $200 right here in the US. Now, instead of sending the money through a network of banks, TransferWise can send my friend 3,900 pesos out of the account they already have in Mexico. And presto, the money gets to my friend right away. No bank transfer, no bank transfer fees. Now, obviously, there's more money going to Mexico than the other way around, so the transfer agents have to manage the balances via traditional bank transfers, but they can do that with bigger amounts and they can plan it in advance. I know this audience is a very international audience. You're moving around, going from Brazil to Australia, Colombia to the United States, Venezuela to Peru, China to Germany, France to Canada, Morocco to the United Kingdom. If you send or receive money across borders, try your best to make sure both parties have a bank account and try using a company like Remitly or TransferWise or something similar. They have great apps usually. PayPal can sometimes be a good option, and maybe even Libra someday or another cryptocurrency. Get the right exchange rate and pay a competitive fee. You work too hard for your money to pay 3 bank fees and a currency markup just to send money in 2019. Speaking of international payments, I asked some of my contacts on WhatsApp if they're comfortable paying in US dollars, and one of the things I found is that in Latin America, a lot of credit cards aren't international. That means a lot of people in Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, they can't pay for things in dollars even if they wanted to. In Europe and Japan, people are pretty used to paying in other currencies. But for some reason in Latin America, it was different. So that's why when we were setting up Plain English Plus, we made sure to partner with a local fintech company called eBanks. And what eBanks does is it lets customers in Latin America pay in their own currency via a local bank transfer or a local debit or credit card. Although I will get paid in dollars, the customer gets to pay in reais or pesos. It's a little extra work on our end, but we wanted to make sure that these crazy international bank rules didn't stop anyone from joining if they wanted to. So if you live in Latin America and you'd like to learn more about how to join Plain English Plus with your own currency, just visit plainenglish.com/pay, P-A-Y, to learn more. Before we get to the expression, I did want to say thanks to Marcelo from Argentina for suggesting an article on new fintech companies, and I gave it a little bit of thought, and I thought, I bet what this audience wants to hear about the most is money transfer. So thanks, Marcelo, for inspiring me to do this episode. The expression we're going to talk about today is on hand. Here's how you heard it the first time. Cash transfer agents like MoneyGram and Western Union need to have enough cash on hand to process transfers. They need to have enough cash readily available. In this case, enough cash has to be in the shops. If they don't have enough cash on hand at the destination, then they can't process the transfer. For them to keep their promises, they need to have enough cash on hand to give the recipients. Do you remember when we talked about cashless shops? They don't like having to keep a lot of cash on hand. It presents a security problem and complicates logistics since they have to always count it and make regular deposits at the bank. It's not easy to have a lot of cash on hand, especially if you're a smaller business. If you've been listening for a while, you know I like to cook on my grill, but I don't love to go shopping for food. So I always try to have some frozen meat or fish on hand in case I want to cook, but don't have time to go to the store. I always want to have something relatively healthy available right here in my house, something on hand. You can also use this to refer to people who are readily available. It's always nice when companies have customer service representatives on hand to answer your questions. It's nice when a company has people available to answer your questions. It's concert season here in Chicago, and organizers of big events like festivals and concerts, maybe you've heard of Lollapalooza, that's our big one. The organizers of these need to have security on hand just in case something goes wrong. They want to have security guards available in case they need them. If a situation develops, they don't want to have to wait to call the police. They want to have security on hand to try to get a situation under control. Let's reach way back in English history for our quote today. It's from Jonathan Swift. He was an Irish writer in the 1600s and 1700s and was best known for his satire. I wanted a quote about money for today's episode, so here is the line from Jonathan Swift. A wise man should have money in his head, but not in his heart. Kind of like that. So that's all for today's episode. Thanks for joining us once again. JR and I will be back on Thursday. If you've enjoyed today's episode, remember, you can get even more out of Plain English by joining Plain English Plus, our new membership community. With extra episode resources and monthly language learning courses, Plain English Plus is the best way to take your English learning to the next level. To learn more, check out plainenglish.com/plus. See you Thursday.